seat. Good morning, Stonebridge. Good morning, those of you watching online. Thanks for being with us. Take out that little bulletin thing. There's a couple things we want to highlight for you this morning. Colleen, thank you. First is this week, the elders met about 4 weeks ago. And one of the things that we talked about was we wanted to hear back from you, like your thoughts on how the church is doing, what's happening in the world, how the church can be helpful to people. So we have set up 4 different times this week where there will be an elder or two that will meet with a group of people, and it'll just be dialogue, back and forth. Hey, questions, give us feedback. So those times in the bulletin: Tuesday night at our house, Merrimack Shores Court, real close by. Wednesday night, Alan and Lori Godby's. Thursday night here at church, as well as Thursday during the daytime, from noon to 1. Simply ask you, if you would, to sign up so we have an idea how many are coming. The times are structured to be about an hour, hour and a quarter. It's not going to be very long. There is no child care, so those of you with small ones might like divide and conquer and send somebody with all the answers, and then someone stays home, okay? Along with that, you should have gotten an email with, I think it's a 10-question survey. Really simple, like rate 1 to 5, and then there's 3 that just ask for your feedback. Well, I encourage you to get those turned back in too, because our elder team will meet next Sunday, and we want to review the stuff that we're hearing from people as we think about where the next couple of years are going. So it's just a great way, maybe not the best way, but it is a way to hear from you what your thoughts are on where the church is, where it's going, where you'd like to see it head, that kind of fun stuff. Okay, enough on that. Bible study starting for you ladies. The information's in there. We've got a small group that meets on, Mondays? You guys meet every other Monday, right? For a group for those with smaller children. Those of you whose kids are grown, we've got a Sunday afternoon small group that will be launching, I think, next Sunday. They're actually going to be studying what does the Bible say about the current topics we're facing. Politics. What is a Christian supposed to think politically? What about abortion? What about some of the stuff we're seeing with just gender identity, all right? So some of the hot buttons that are out there in culture, does the Bible say anything about that? What should a Christian think in some of these things, all right? So that'll be on Sunday afternoons. You can check that out online. And then the Moms Midweek Meetup is also on there for you moms with smaller kids. All that stuff's online. Let's see, the Connect card is in there. This helps us just make sure we have correct information on you, how to reach you, okay? So if you would fill that out. And then the last Sunday of the month, the kids are doing, it looks like your Superhero Sunday in the kids area. Encouraged to dress up like their favorite superhero, okay? And Sherry's going to have fun with them back there. All right. We're going to kick the kids out at this point in time. There they go. All right. This is one of those messages where I feel that I need to give a disclaimer. So here's your disclaimer, right? My only qualification to talk about parenting today is the fact that I am one, okay? And but the Bible talks a lot about how to raise up kids. I don't think there's an expert. I don't think there's anybody that ever bats 1,000. But wouldn't we all agree that there are some ways that are better than others? Here's what I'm interested in. I'm going to work really hard to leave time at the end of this for questions. And so as we're going through this, if there's a question you'd like to ask, I want to take a whack at answering it. Because as I've talked to staff, we had a staff meeting on Wednesday, and I said, I'm not going to say anything that's new for many of you. You're not going to get any nugget that's like, man, I never heard that before. Wow, that's really profound. That's not going to happen today, okay? What hopefully will happen today is you'll be reminded of some things. I realize there's a cross-section of people in here. Some of you don't have kids, right? Some of you, your kids have left the house. Some of you are right in the midst of the battle. We're all across the spectrum today. My goal for those of you without kids is to give you something to think about. One of the things when I was reflecting on this, when our oldest was born, he didn't come with an instruction manual when day one, hey, here's how you do this, right? So all along the way, you're learning somewhere, you're picking up stuff on what it's like to be a parent, what it's like to be a grandparent, what it's like to care for other people. I find that I agree with a guy who said there are two types of people in the world, generally speaking, when it comes to parenting. At the end of summer, there are those who say, thank God summer is over. I can't wait to see them go back to school, right? And there are those who say, oh my God, summer's over. I enjoyed this so much. And sometimes we feel guilty for one or the other, right? And my hope today is not to in any way cast guilt as much as it is to look at what Solomon had to say on how we can raise kids. I'm called today's message, how to raise kids that you want to spend time with. Some of you have kids that this sounds really weird, but if you were honest, you would say, I wouldn't choose to spend time with my kids. As weird as that sounds, right? Some of us, I just want to introduce you. Let's see if I can make this work. Let's see, we're going to try this. These are my favorite people. If I honestly had to choose how I was going to spend time, these are the people that I would look forward to spending time with, right? This was, so if you're not familiar with my family, this is Casey. She's our youngest. Casey today is an employee in early childhood with Zumwalt Schools. She is married to Ryan, who didn't make the cut on this picture. It's the truth, right? Okay? All right. So there's Kirsten and James. Kirsten is our oldest daughter. Kirsten works for Build-A-Bear in marketing. She was with Arch Apparel for a good chunk of time. And the little guy that they've got there is James and grandson to a couple of the families here. This is my son, Joe. Joe is a barista at Coma Coffee over by the Galleria. He's been there for a number of years. He can make a really, really mean cup of coffee, which is outstanding because I can't stand coffee, right? Joe makes me just, Patty will tell you, on more than one occasion, I have sat in the same room with Joe and said, he can't be my son, okay? So that is Joe to me, all right? And then this is Danny. Danny is our son-in-law. He did make the picture. Sorry, Ryan. I love spending time with these guys. So here is Ryan. Ryan made this picture. He is married to Casey. There's Danny. There's my son, Eric. We're out playing golf. We did it yesterday, played some golf together. Every chance I get, I love hanging with these are girls on their way to Taylor Swift. I had to ask again who Taylor Swift was because I thought she was a has-been. So for this whole phenomenon to take place across America, and then these two young ladies went. This is Casey presenting me with my stuffed teddy bear before my big surgery. Very, very thoughtful. Each of my kids has different qualities that we find that we enjoy in, which has made a challenge parenting them, right? It's one of the things that those of you with kids understand that's I just wish there was here's the box and I could get them all to fit in the box and just do it right. And they're just sort of all different, okay? This is Kirsten and I and really the whole family. We went last year to see Pujols hit 695. And Eric came up from Dallas and we wanted to create a memory. And so we thought this was one of the last opportunities we had to go watch Molina and Pujols play together. And Pujols actually did us a favor by hitting a home run, of which we all celebrated along with most of the rest of St. Louis, okay? And then this is again the whole family. I think the coolest thing you can have is kids that you want to spend time with, that you genuinely enjoy hanging out with. And my heart grieves when I hear stories of parents who don't want to do that with their kids. And I get it. Stuff happens in families. And so even at the end of this, I want to address, well, what happens if, like, I don't really like my kids? Like, we're just at odds right now. What do I do? Okay? Because I think there may be some things that you could do, but it's not like in a microwave society, I want to hit 30 seconds and have it fixed. That ain't happening, right? If you're at odds with your kids, then you didn't get there in 30 seconds, and you're not going to fix it in 30 seconds. Kids, if you're at odds with your parents and you want something better than what you know, it's not a quick fix, but it can be fixed, right? Because I think that's what the grace of God challenges us. All right, so how do I raise kids that I want to hang with? I didn't realize until I was preparing for this message that you can find, it's called a coach, and they will charge you $125 to $350 a session to coach you on how to raise your kids. They meet with parents in person over the phone. They set goals with you. They develop a plan with you on how for you not to kill your kids. That's the goal. It is, are you ready for this? It's over a $1 billion coaching industry. These people helping parents be better parents. Parenting coach Tina, I don't know her last name, talked about her role. She says, who is there for these parents? Parenting is the hardest job in the world, but there's no training for it in advance. And I found that to be true. The closest you get to any kind of training on how to be a parent, who's going to teach you guys how to be parents? Your parents. That's the closest thing we got, is how you were raised. And you take that with you. My mom was a screamer. Where did I learn to scream? So I grew up with it. My mom was a yeller. My dad was passive. My dad wasn't much involved. My dad never talked to me about money. My dad never talked to me about finances, how to handle money. So guess what? We get married, and early on, I'm like, well, she's going to pay the bills. I never saw my dad write a check. It was always my mom. So my operating assumption was that's what the woman does. She pays the bills. Some of you, if we could have genuine conversations about your parents and how they raised you, there's stuff there that still like just rubs you the wrong way. And there's stuff they did right. Some of you have been blessed with folks that really, like, when you look back and like, hey, man, this was really, really cool. My parents were, and you fill in the blank, right? But the closest thing we get to any kind of manual, instruction manual, is the way we were raised. And we take it with us. What prepared me to be a parent? 15 years of student ministry. 15 years watching other people raise their kids. 15 years of watching other parents do it right, and sometimes kick the can and not do it right. When even our kids were younger, we took in a teen that was someone else's teenager. And you talk about like, wow, man. Here's what I still remember this day with Pauline. And we're still in touch with Pauline. She's like a great mom right now. I remember when Patty took Pauline for prom dress shopping. And, there was like, well, what do you think? And I'm like, oh, man, well, I'm not really her dad. But wait a minute, I am like serving as her dad. And I just remember it was like a real adventure trying to find a prom dress for Pauline, right? If I'm not, yeah. And like coming back with a couple and like, no, you absolutely are not wearing those. I thought, well, no, So you just don't get like, here you go. So Solomon, in his writings, really the whole book of Proverbs, is a guy that's giving instructions to his son on how to live wisely, right? So would you open Proverbs 22:6 is a verse that I'm going to guess if you've grown up in church, you're familiar with. See if we can unpack it and then from there leapfrog. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not turn from it. There's two different schools of thought on this verse, which is sort of interesting to me. There's one school of thought that basically this is a snarky way of Solomon saying, if you don't do anything with your kid, if you're not intentional about training your kid, they're going to go down a path, and the path won't be pleasant. If you just think about if there's no mid-course correction in the life of a kid, what direction are they going to go? And there's another school of thought that says Solomon is absolutely saying train, give instruction to, be intentional. On purpose, look at your kids and say, man, we've got to make a choice to go down a certain way, because if we don't, it's going to be a disaster. Train up a child. The word means anywhere from like a newborn to maybe think elementary school. Okay? There comes a point when you get into what I would say adolescence, middle school, high school, college, where I'm not training so much anymore. My training days are done. I'm advice giving. I'm coaching. But I am not training my kid, because I've already passed that stage, right? In the way he should go. What is that path? Where should he go? What's the direction that you want to see your kid or your grandkid go? I'm a big believer in this. I am raising my grandchild. I'm raising my grandchild by how I continue to coach my kids and whatever direct influence God gives me with the little guy and the little ones that may still yet come. So Solomon's saying, hey, be intentional. It's not going to happen by accident. Nobody ended up with a family they liked without some work and some sacrifice and some effort. There's a whole lot of families who did nothing, who's like, hey, I'll just leave it. You know, they'll turn out okay. I turned out okay. And they're dealing with the after effects. You don't want that. I said here, smart kids get good grades. Wise kids leave good lives. And I find a lot of parents want your kids to do well in school. Absolutely. You want your kid to be athletically sound or really involved with music. There's a lot of good things that kids can be involved in. What you want at the end of the day is your kids making good choices. We got wind this week. There's some stuff going on in the Zumwalt schools. There's some kids who made some poor choices. There's some kids who have been suspended. There's some kids who have been life is not well for some families right now in this area because there were poor choices made. I don't think anybody sets out to destroy their life. I don't think anybody says, hey, today I want to get out of bed and I want to put my life and my family in the toilet. But I think we do it because we unintentionally say, you know, I think, man, this, and we fail to see, no, there's maybe some better stuff out there that I want to encourage my kids towards. I want to say this. I feel like there are parents who have done the best you knew how for kids, and it didn't turn out. And I don't think, it's between you and God. You know what you put into the relationship. You know what you did, and you know what you didn't do. And you can tell me all you want. You know in your heart what you did and you didn't do. And sometimes you really did the best you could before God is your witness, and your kids are not going the direction you want them to go. I mean, the father in the garden had 2 kids that he had to say, get out. Right? Because there is a sense in which our kids have got their own will. And I can pour into them, and I can encourage that, and I can channel that when they're young, but then they get old, and it's their choices. And God's going to hold them responsible for their choices. He's going to hold you responsible for how you parented all through even the poor choices. Solomon would say, our goal is to raise wise kids. I want them to get good grades. I want them to be good athletes. I want them to use the skills and gifts. But at the end of the day, I want them making good choices. And that's what I'm parenting towards. Okay? So how do I get there? What would Solomon say are some things that we need to be thinking about. I want to remind you that parenting, we are the primary influencers. Talk about culture all day long, talk about music, talk about TV, all that other stuff. The reality is, moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, you are still the primary influence in the life of your kid. Now, it gets harder as they get older. When they're young, they're watching you. I was listening this week, thinking of this message, Rodney Atkins' song, Watching You, Dad. Familiar with the country song? Right? Little boy, just my boy and me. We're traveling along. Stoplight comes. His Happy Meal spills all over him. Says a four-letter word that a 4-year-old shouldn't know. Son, where'd you learn to talk like that? And he says, what? I've been watching you, Dad. He's all racked with guilt. Goes home. Next scene, he's praying, God, would you help me help my stupid self? In the music video, the little boy is sneaking around the corner watching his dad pray. They get that night, he says, I turned off my son's Scooby-Doo night light. And he gets down on his hands and knees and he folds his hands and he talks to God like he was talking to a friend. He says, son, where'd you learn to pray like that? He said, I've been watching you, Dad. That's right now, that's this culture, right? I grew up with Cats in the Cradle. Stevens was the guy's name, right? If you're familiar with that song. It's all about a son watching his dad and turning out, and he says, my boy is turning out just like me. I didn't have time for my kids. I was busy trying to make a name for myself. I was busy chasing my career. I wasn't there, and my boy has turned out just like me. Didn't have time for his dad. So culture gets it. That's all I want you to see. Neither of those people are saying, hey, this is a God song. This is a God idea. They're saying, kids, watch us. And they grow just to be like us. So again, I want to back up and say, hey, moms and dads, do you want your kids to be generous? Do you want your kids to be giving people? Well, where will they learn that from? They'll be watching you. Are you generous? What does generosity look like for you? Do you want your kids to care about other people? How will they learn to care for other people? They're watching you. Are you available? Do you care for other people? How do you talk about other people in your house? Do you want your kids to learn what forgiveness looks like? How will they learn forgiveness? You opening the Bible and teaching them a lesson? Or the time that you were wronged, you didn't continue to complain and badmouth and swear and cuss out the person that did you wrong? I can get the book out. I've done it with my kids. I've said, hey, here's what God says. But I know full well that they've learned more from watching how I've treated other people, watching how I've treated my wife, than they have ever from like coming to Sunday school lessons. Because at some point, every student over here knows what they've heard, and now they're wanting and they're asking this question: is it real? They know what you've taught them. I can close this. They could recite it back. What they want to know is, does it work? Moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, is what you're saying, does it work? And so don't give up believing what some would, that it's friends, it's this, it's that. I saw a study, Barna Research, asked kids, whose faith influenced you? And for kids, they responded, 68% of them said it was mom's faith, 46% said it was dad's faith. Christian teens were asked, which parent offers you spiritual guidance? Moms pray more with their kids than dads do. Moms talk about their faith more than dads do. Moms talk about the Bible more. Moms are more likely to encourage going to church than dads are. And yet, all of it, over 50%, show the value, the influence that a mom and dad have. I started going to church because of my grandma. Way back when, it was my grandma who went to the Presbyterian church 2 blocks down our house. She was faithful in a Sunday school class. She was there every Sunday, and she started taking my brother and I. My parents never went. And I've shared the story with you. There came a point when I was in 5th grade when my mom went in to get me one more time and said, hey, you're going to get up and go to church today. Now, this is a 5th grader. And I looked at her and I said, why do you make us go to church when you don't? And they never got me up to go to church again. Because how do you respond to that, Mom or Dad? Why do you make me go to church if you don't? Why do you tell me it's important when it's obvious it's not important to you? Never underestimate that you are the primary voice for your kids. And I want a voice in the life of my kid. I want to be able to speak to them. But I've got to be able to have a life that sort of backs that up. That gives credence to what I'm trying to say to them, right? Okay, so if there are 5 priorities, I'll just give you 5 of these, okay? Man, I was really struggling with, come on. Can I get back to the first slide? Here's what our kids need from us. Just a home that fears God. I want to blow through these really quickly because there's probably not going to be anything new here. Just, Solomon said in Proverbs 1:7 that the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. It's a home that reverences, and when I say fears God, has a respect for faith. Moms and dads, you have a faith that you own. Now, what do you say? If you say, Mike, I just really don't. Why is that a big deal? I just don't think it's that big a deal that I can still be a good parent and not have a faith. Yes, you can. You absolutely can. I think one of the challenges you'll face is, as your kids move past little to being teens, is when they start asking questions, what do you point them back to? You should be a good person. Because remember, you're not talking about faith now. So you should be kind. Well, why should I be kind? Why is it important to be kind? Because you look out in culture and you see all sorts of people that aren't kind. In fact, you see people who aren't kind seem to get ahead. Why should I be kind? Why should I be considerate of other people? When those people seem to be the ones that are progressing on the sports teams at school. And the ones who are rude and crude seem to be like in the best positions. And they're on student council. Why should I do this? And what do you point them back to? Because you have no faith. It's just your humanity. That's what you're trying to say, right? You're just trying to be a good person. So I think that's where Solomon said, the fear of the Lord, a healthy respect for who God is and who Jesus is, and encouraging your kids to walk and say, as for me and my house, Joshua said, you got a lot of options out there, but as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. And then I always would point my kids back to, this is who we are. This is who God is. This is who our family is. The wise woman builds her house, but with her own hands, the foolish one tears it down. Solomon looking out there and saying, hey, there are people out there by their own dumb thing. Now, let me just ask you a question. How would someone unintentionally destroy their house? Could you point to people that you know whose homes are not going well, and what are the choices they made that landed them there? What comes to mind? Did you see selfishness there? Did you see backbiting there? Did you see words there that were carelessly spoken? Did you hear about the little 5-year-old? Went to school. His teacher asked him on the first day what his name was. He said, dummy. Where did he pick that up? From a dad that every time the kid turned around was saying, hey, dummy. And maybe good-naturedly. Let's just say maybe the dad wasn't even trying to be malicious. Hey, dummy. Hey, dummy. Hey, dummy. What's your name? Dummy. I think you don't have to think long to find, if you look for examples in culture where families are not going well, and say, how did they get there? What did they do? And Solomon would just simply say, man, there's a way to do this that honors God, fears God, and there's a way where we just destroy ourselves. Those who fear the Lord are secure. Solomon says he will be a refuge for their children. Fear of the Lord is a life-giving fountain. It offers escape from the snares of death. Our kids are going to be faced with choices. There's going to be things that come at them. Maybe the thing that saves them is the instruction you provided and the rationale behind it about why that's important. Why should your kid tell the truth? Touched on it last week. Let me come back to it. Why do you encourage your kid to tell the truth? Do you want your kid to tell? Do you care if your kid tells the truth or not? Do you care if your kid tells little white lies? Do you care if your kid skirts the truth to a teacher? Is it okay if when there's a practice at 4 and your kid doesn't feel like going, you call in and say, hey, he's got a little sniffle, he won't be there? Is that okay? Because what did you just say to your kid? You just told your kid it's okay not to tell the truth to get what they want. Am I dumb in thinking that doesn't happen a bunch? I bet you it happens a lot. Is truth telling important? Because they're watching, right? And Solomon would say, man, those whose faith is just trying to do what God wants them to do, that becomes a safe place. Your home is a place where your kids feel secure in. We need to teach them a respect for authority. I was talking to staff this week and I said, does it feel like in culture, as we're out living the world and just seeing things, that there's less of a respect for people in authority than there used to be? And some of you are nodding your head yes. And then I honestly ask, well, how did we get there? Why is that? Sherry was saying that her son Cooper was student teaching. It was in a classroom, and one of the kids in the classroom said, I don't have to listen to you, you're not a real teacher. How did we get there? And that's an interesting question. If most people that I've asked this week would say, yeah, it seems like it's worse. And I'm like, well, why? We need to help our kids understand that there are authorities over them. And it starts when they're young, but then right? They're going to go off to school. There's going to be an authority over them. They're going to play on a sports team. There's going to be a coach over them. They're going to go get a job. There's going to be an authority over them. All of life, we've got authorities over us. God has instituted the home as the primary place where that starts at the youngest. So how does it, let me ask you this. So if we would say it's an issue and it starts in the home, in what way do homes kick the can down the road and not helping kids with authority? Can you think of how it might happen? What happens when the kid comes to you and doesn't want to do what you want, what you ask? How do you respond in that way? And it could be what? I don't know. What is it in your house? How many of you fight over the cleanliness of your bedroom, of their bedroom? That's still a thing? Is it? See, in my home, it wasn't. I didn't care what the bedroom was like. Is that fair pay? I didn't care. I don't sleep in it. I close the door. Come over, I close the door. I don't care. That wasn't a battle that I wanted to fight and win. What about hair? Our Joe went through probably every hairstyle imaginable. Mohawk. Comes home with a mohawk. And man, I wrestled with it. I did. And I thought, I'm not the one that has to go out in public like that. I really did. That's where I landed. Is that a fight I wanted to fight? Man, did I like it? No. Joe, if you didn't know that, no. But I didn't want to die for it. I didn't want to fracture a relationship over the length of my kid's hair. Honesty, all day long. My kids tell you we would go round and round about telling the truth, about being where you said you were going to be. about coming in at the time you said you were going to come in. All day long, those were the fights that I wanted to have. So I think there's a sense here when you're teaching your kids to respect authority, know what battles you want to face. What's really, really important. One of our kids wanted to quit his soccer team mid-year. Didn't like the coach. Didn't like the way the coach coached. Didn't like the attitude. Wanted to quit. Dad, can I quit? And I said, absolutely not. 2 reasons. One, I'm cheap, and we'd paid for a whole year of soccer. That's the truth, right? 2, in my mind, I'm not going to try and reason with where he was in his age development, but I did say to him, we don't quit. If you want to quit at the end of the year, you can quit. Right now, you're mid-season. You're not quitting. You're going to still go to practice. You're still going to participate, because I didn't want to raise a quitter. What are the battles that you want to fight? You need to sort those out in your head, because there's so many of them that come at you, right, moms and dads? You have to determine which are the ones that are important. And you will probably default to the things that your parents maybe felt were important. Because remember, that baggage we carry with us? And so you may have to say to yourself, you know what? That was important to there, not so much to me today. He taught me and he said to me, let your heart retain my words, keep my commands and live. Get wisdom, get understanding. Do not forget, nor turn away from the words of my mouth. Solomon said to his son, the best thing you can do is listen to what I'm telling you, because it will save your life. Moms and dads, grandmas and grandpas, you need to be convinced that what you're telling your kids will save their life. Maybe physically. We had a rule that there'd only be one other occupant in a teen driver. My kids were teen driving, they would only have one other person in the car. And that was something we fought for. You weren't going to have 2, you weren't going to have 3. You weren't going to be the driver that carted people around. Absolutely not. You can have one friend to go with you. Why? Because studies show that the more that there are in the vehicle, the more likely you are, the percentages are higher for an accident. So we said no. That was a line that we drew. There may be things that you say that say, I'm doing this because, you know what? It doesn't mean you're going to get in an accident, but it does mean, apart from me, statistics say, so here, if you want to drive, here's your box. If you want to drive, that's fine. Have somebody else drive. I was fine with saying that. What are the battles you want to fight because you want to teach your kids to listen to you? You want to teach your kids to listen to you on the first time. I really feel for you parents that are saying to me that you're telling your kids 3, 4, 5 times to do something. You're training them. You know what you're training them? You're not serious. You're not serious till you start to yell. Is that how it works? First time you ask, second time you ask, then you begin to raise your voice a little bit, and then you're really mad? Well, now I need to obey. You need to back that up. You need to back that up. I asked you to do something. I was reading an article in the paper that lamented the number of teens who were shot by police. And one of the points that the article made was this, was like, why is that happening? Because almost always, officers will tell you, they will give you a command. Put your hands up, get on the ground. They'll tell you to do something. And kids aren't doing it. And they're getting shot. Now, it could be defiance. It could be, right? I'm just obstinate. Why do kids not listen? It's because I would say we as parents and adults don't believe that they should until we get mad. That's you. You've got to do something a little bit differently there. You've got to think a little bit differently there. Because what you're saying to your kid is it's okay not to listen until I get upset with you. And now this is real. All right, hey, here's the third one. Wise son brings joy to his father, foolish son brings grief. Kids need to learn and receive correction. They need to learn authority, and then there needs to be, as I'm going to just move along here, fathers, do not provoke your children to anger, but bring them up in the discipline and instruction of the Lord. They need this sense in which we're teaching them, but then they need to understand that there are choices have consequences. what are the consequences when our kids don't do what they're supposed to do? That's on the negative side. What are the consequences when our kids do what they're supposed to do? Because God said this, man, he said, you choose life and there's good things that'll happen in Deuteronomy. He says, or you choose to make poor choices and there's death. How many of you give allowances to your kids? Probably a good chunk of you. Why do you give allowances? Why do you give them? Because they're part of the family? How many of you give allowances for doing chores? Doesn't everybody in your family have to do chores? Why do your kids get paid to do chores? Do you do chores? Do you get paid to do chores? We didn't do allowances for chores. We never gave money for chores. I'll tell you why. I read somewhere, and it really resonated with me. If I want to raise someone who picks up trash, pay them. I don't mean any disparaging to blue-collar workers, but that was the way, that was what was said to me. If you want to teach your kid to pick up trash, then pay him to pick up trash in your house. If you want to raise a kid to think, pay him to read books. So our kids, their allowances was tied into grades. I wanted to pay them to study. I wanted to pay them to do well in school. I wanted to pay them to educate themselves. Thinking that in my way, if they got good grades, it might help towards college. Right? I'm trying to save some money on the other end, right? Nobody ever got a scholarship for college because you kept your room clean. That's the truth. Our kids need to understand that when they make good choices, there's rewards for it. If all you ever did was to make the right choice and you never saw anything good come from it, it gets a little bit hard. We all know about getting slapped when you make poor choices. And that's normally how this goes, right? What are the rewards for your kids when they do well? What can they expect from you? And Solomon would simply say, man, as you're out there raising kids, let's encourage them by realizing that you are free to choose, but you're not free from the consequence of your choice. That's good and bad. How do you teach grace in your house? How do you teach mercy in your house? Through choices that have been made. There's some kids in the Zoom system right now who are learning in a very, very hard way that their choices have consequences. They were free to choose and participate in Spirit Week and do all sorts of crazy things this past week. And they did them. And they're suspended. And there's a lot of pain, there's a lot of grief. They didn't choose the pain and grief. How do we help our kids when they make good choices and keep rewarding that? Because for many of us, we're like Pavlov's dog. I don't want to say that. I believe in the grace of God. But most of us respond favorably when good things happen that reinforce our good choices. How can we keep fueling that, moms and dads? Hey, they need to learn self-control. Here's the fourth thing that our kids need from us. We need to teach them to say no. We need to teach them to say no to alcohol. Proverbs 20, verse 1 says, wine is a mocker, strong drink is raging, and whosoever is deceived thereby is not wise. There's 2 or 3 verses in there where Solomon talks about the ill effects of alcohol. And I say that in a culture that loves Bush. Man, it's in our stadium, it's downtown, it's all around us. I get it. And I mean, you can send me the email, hey, it's okay to drink. And, yep, it is. Absolutely is. Drunk is what God is against, right? I would challenge us a little bit in saying this, that how do our kids learn moderation if all they do is see us drink? If we're not willing to say no to it, how do you tell your kids no? I had a man say to me once when I found out that my kid was going to a party where there was going to be drinking. I had an elder of the church say to me, Mike, it's no big deal. Everybody drinks. Let him just go and drink and just tell him to call you if he's had too much. That was his response to me. And I looked across the table from him and I said, absolutely not. Do I want my kids to call If they got themselves in a jam, absolutely, they knew they could. Was I going to encourage? Was I going to, by being passive, say that's acceptable behavior? Absolutely not. No way. No, that's wrong. You're underage, you're a minor. Nothing good happens with minors and alcohol. But where do they catch the attitudes from? Moms and dads, it's us. They're watching. And so I'm just saying, man, just be mindful of that. Those who love pleasure become poor. Those who love wine and luxury will never be rich. Proverbs 21, teach them to say no to instant gratification. Here's the issue. They go through, and I've seen it, you've seen it, you're going through the store and the kid wants, cries, throws themselves on the floor because they want. By the grace of God, don't give in. Don't do it. Tie them in the cart if you have to. Don't do it. Because you're enabling. You're telling them if they cry, whine enough. And so it gets to be when they're older and they're just like for the 5th time pleading with you, can I? And you're going to say for the 6th time, no. What part of no did I not convey at the early onset, right? So we're just helping our kids to learn self-control because there are the things that come out. Here's the last one. They need to help us choose friends. Show me your kids' friends. I can give you a pretty good idea of the direction their life's taken. But they don't know. We are wired for approval. And so anybody who gives us approval, we gravitate towards. We need to help our kids discern what is like, this is good, and this is not so good. Because the one who walks with wise people is going to be a good spot. The one who hangs with foolish people is going to get beat. Did I tell you there were 6 kids in the Zumo system that are facing some discipline? Not 1, 6. And I just think you don't have to look very far to find that people who get in trouble rarely get in trouble alone. And I just really wanted to work with my kids that I didn't want them to be part of that. I wanted to so how do you do that? Is your house open? Our house is open. We wanted kids at our house. Patty would bake cookies. Patty would have stuff out. We always had enough soda. What are you doing after the game? Come on over. Invite everybody over. We don't care. They stay till 11:30. We don't care. Really didn't care. Because I knew where they were. Because I wanted a positive influence. We had at least a couple of spiritual conversations with our kids and their friends over the dining room table. Because they knew I was a pastor. They knew they were church kids. And so invariably, it might lead to a conversation about God, about faith, about, hey, I was raised this, I was raised that. In our house. I wanted it in our house. Was it messy? Did you have to clean up a mess afterwards? Yeah, sure. So it cost you some chocolate chip cookies. Who cares? In the grand scheme of things, the influence you get, oh man, all day long, I would trade that. Help your kids choose good friends. What if they resist? Help your kids choose good friends. Use your influence. Have them over. Ask them, talk to them, initiate dialogue. Do you talk to your kids' friends? Do you know who your kids' friends are? Do you talk to them? Are they comfortable talking to you? Or do you look away? Do you excuse yourself? Are you out of the room? Be involved in the life of your kids. Be involved in the life of your grandkids. Know who their friends are and be comfortable going up and just introducing yourself. Be a part of their world. Kids love that. Kids love attention. So let's give it. Let's give positive attention from positive motives. You can do that. I can do that. All right, here's what I want to do. I doubt any of this was rocket science. Any of this was really, really new. What I'd love to do now is say, what questions could we answer, take a whack at? What do you do if you've blown it with your kids? What do you do if you're sitting here this morning or you're watching online and you don't feel like your kids are your friends? There's conflict there. There's animosity there. I'm at odds with a family member, but nobody in my immediate family. So I get it. I understand that stuff happens, right? So what do you do then? Let me give you a couple things that I honestly think might help. One, the door is always open. Don't let the door be closed because of you. I get you're angry, maybe they hurt you, maybe they said something. You take the initiative, you keep the door open. You're praying, you're asking God for grace, you're asking God to repair the relationship. You're talking. Everybody has a cell phone. If you're sitting there waiting for your kid to call you, you're wrong. There's no reason that you can't be on the phone. It just kills me. I ask people all the time, how often do you call your kids? I don't know. I never talk to them when they call. I'm like, dude, why? Why is it like that? You don't want to talk to your kids? Pick up the phone and call. Some of you have lost parents. Do you wish you could call your mom or dad? They're no longer here? You bet you do, right? Guy over here nodding his head, yes. If you've lost a parent that you loved, you know you want to talk to them. So why not now model what you want? Call your kids. My son in Dallas would tell you, his best friend Danny is back there. I am sure among my kids there is laughter. Standard joke when I start making phone calls and I drive home from a baseball game is, which call am I, Dad? My first? Third? I try and call them in order. But I promise you, my son in Dallas hears from me 2 or 3 times a week. 2 or 3 times a week I'm calling him. And all I'm doing is saying, hey, what are you doing? Just checking in. What's going on? It's amazing to me that that thing that we're all attached to can be used for good. So what can you do if you're kind of out of sight? Keep the door open. Stay in touch. Pray. Here's the last thing with that. If you've not apologized for your wrong, you need to do that. If you've never had a heart-to-heart where you've said, you're wrong, I'm wrong, please forgive me, you need to do that. My kids will tell me, they should be able to remember that each of them, before they went away to school, we went to breakfast. And one of the points of breakfast was I didn't want them leaving the house with any hurts. And so I apologized because I could point to things. I just said, I want you to know I wasn't perfect. Ha, ha, ha. But I am genuinely sorry. I don't want you going off to school carrying any more baggage than you need to from growing up in my household. If you've never done that with your kids, who are you fooling? Because they know that you've messed up. So just own it, because you're modeling what you want them to do. And you're in humility saying, I don't bat 1,000. Okay, what else? Here's one that came up in conversations. How do you discipline? You know that you're supposed to correct, so what does it look like? And it's all over the map, isn't it? Right? I grew up in a world of spankings. That was my world. I understand fully in this world, it's like, oh, spankings, like, I was having conversation with people. If a kid goes to school and says they were spanked, DSS might be called. It's a different world, right? So you've got to figure that one out. You've really got to sort that one through. I know there are families in here that still spank. If you're ever going to spank, it's a last resort. It's on the buttocks. It's not with your hand. You're never using your hand. You're using an object. There was one time with one of my kids where they messed up to the point where this has been repeatedly. And so I said to them, here's the deal. I said, either you will be spanked or I will spank the dog that you love. It's your choice. Now some of you are like, man, that's cruelty to animals. You got to hear my heart. It's a dog. My heart, it's a dog. It's an animal. It's a dog. Jesus took your spanking. Don't ever think there's never been anybody that wasn't punished for your behavior, because Jesus took your spanking. And he was bruised and he was beaten for your sin. And he was no dog. So I said, your choice. Because I wanted him to feel the gravity and the weight of having to choose. Will he accept responsibility for his choices, or will he pass it on to somebody else? and he chose himself. I am saying to you as a flawed human being, I was always, here's another thing that I hear sometimes, I was never trying to be my kid's friend. I was never wanting my kids to like me. That was never my goal. My goal was when they get to be the age they are now, that they would respect and that our household would be happy. You can't have that if you're worried about being a friend when they're young and they're going through their teen years, because you're going to have to make some hard choices and you're going to have to say some things that they may not want to hear. But you do it because you realize that you want something better on the other end. And you show me somebody that's trying to be a friend to their kid now, and I show you a disaster waiting to happen. Because at some point, you're not going to be a friend. At some point, you're going to have to make a call that will be seen unfriendly, and that will be like a wedge in your relationship. So I made it known. I'm not trying to be your friend. I'm your dad. Patty's your mom. I want you to respect me when you're 20 and your 30s when you're raising your kids. Not liking me now, because that's temporal. So that was something that we were working with. That whole discipline thing, man, it's a chore, it's a challenge. Just stay at it, stay consistent. Don't quit on it. What else? Is there a question out here that honestly we could take a whack at answering? Yeah. Be real loud, sir, so you got a deaf guy.
Jesus said in Luke 18, when the Son of Man comes, will he find faith on earth? There's very little real biblical God-fearing faith, even in the church. Billy Graham said 80% of the people in church in America today are not going to heaven because they're not born again. I'm sorry to rain on the parade, but does anybody know how many suicides there are in the United States every year?
How many what?
How many suicides?
It's large, right?
Officially, it's about 47,000, but the actual number is far higher because of the negative stigma. They don't report it. It's a desperate world. People are desperate, and they're not going to come to the church in America because we're not ministering to them. They're not going to come. And until the church in America wakes up, it's almost non-existent right now.
Mm-hmm.
The church in America, in my opinion.
Well, thank you. Was there a question there that I missed, or just sort of a comment? All right, okay. Because here's what I do believe in what he said. You can't parent following Solomon's ways and it not stick out. You're going to have opportunities to share why you do what you do. There's going to be other parents who are going to ask you, hey, I look at your family. Hey, I notice what you got going on. Hey, you seem a little different. And that's going to open a door for you to be able to share. It's because of your relationship with Christ. It's because you're honoring the Word that causes you to think and act differently than what is out there. That's a very valid statement, right? Because out there is, as the gentleman alluded to, there's a lot of people that don't feel like they know what's going on or how to get there, or they know they want something good, they're just not sure, man, why, what? And yeah, faith in Christ is one of the things that's sort of been pushed to the wayside. Just religious fable stories, right? And we're coming back and saying, man, it's the book. As Solomon is saying here, throughout, from beginning to end, The fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. When we model that, we live that, that's going to be attractive because it's going to have some positive fruit from it. Hey, I want to encourage the team to come back up. They're going to lead us in the last song. If you're not there yet, I thought this was interesting. One statement I live by is this: it is mine. The last page hasn't been written. We're writing a book. Your last page hasn't been written. You're at odds with a kid. Your last page hasn't been written. So pray. Ask God for grace. You're praying for them. You're going to keep loving them. You're going to be there for them. And then I made a note right beside all this. Isn't that what the Father does for you? Father quit on you? Love for you today? Grace for you today? He's available for you today? That's what the Father does. That's how He parents today. I want to be just like Him. Stay on our feet. Let's sing with these guys.